I have been running social media algorithms enough to know that it is crazy out there. I decided to do a deep dive. I asked you, I asked ChatGPT, I asked Google, what is the most viral running advice that exists out there in the interwebs? And I have come back with a list divided into 4 categories: training advice, recovery and injury prevention advice, mental advice, and absolutely unhinged advice that I'm gonna go through, tier list, and let you know what I think is worth it and what is not. Also, my only qualifications for talking about running are that I am a professional runner and I got a bachelor's degree in exercise science. So I'm not a certified coach, but I do have some general knowledge about running from my own experiences. With that said, let's get right into this tier list. So first up is training tips. First one is the 10% rule. I feel like most people that have Googled running tips have seen this rule. It basically means you shouldn't increase your training volume by any more than 10% a week. So for example, if you ran 20 miles one week, you shouldn't bump up to more than 22 the next week. I think in general, this advice is pretty decent, but it's just not as simple as that is. And there are so many different caveats: how new you are, if you were injured, if you're coming back from a break from running, if you're very experienced. It's not a hard and fast rule, and for that reason, I'll give it B, because it's also not a bad rule. Next up, we have run a specific pace for easy runs. I don't think that this really should be a thing. I know that there are some coaches out there that believe it should, but I think easy runs should be based on feel. And if you feel good, it's okay to run a little faster. But if you do not feel good, it's okay to run super slow. It's even okay to walk during a run. I have walked up hills during trail runs. That's normal. It's not like you need to run this for it to count. Some days will be slower, some will be faster. That's okay. So I'm gonna give this one a C tier. It's just not it. Next up, we have no rest days. This one is just an immediate D tier. I feel like I don't need to talk about it a lot. Like, it's just the toxic discipline culture. Taking rest days is discipline. It's hard, and it requires you to actually believe in your training and the cycle of it. Rest days are good. They help you recover. They help you avoid injury. They help you perform in your workouts that really count. Don't skip those rest days. Next up, we have run through injuries. I feel like David Goggins is almost certainly the one that normalized this, that it's like the tough and cool and dedicated thing to do, but that's just not the case. It will only set you back more in the long term, so just don't. That's all I've got to say, just don't. So that one's also D tier. Next, we have quick cadence on uphills, and I actually agree with this. I think this is really good advice. It's something that I've been trying to work on. It helps you just keep moving up it and not get into like a slog and like lean back and really lose momentum. So quick cadence on uphills, I'll say A. The next tip is don't static stretch before you run, and I gotta say, this is one of my favorite pieces of running advice that has ever existed in the world, because I hate stretching. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, I don't care if there's science, I don't care, I believe this. I believe it with all of my heart, my soul, my being. I'm never stretching again. And I basically haven't stretched again. So S tier, for sure. Next up is lift your heels when you run. This is also something I've been trying to work on in the last year. It basically means during your stride, when you kick back, lift your heel towards your butt. It's hard to explain, but it really helps like get the maximum amount of power out of your stride. And I think it helped me a lot with trying to increase my speed. So heel lift technique, S tier. Next up is all-out intervals. Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is to blame for this one. People that say you should do all-out intervals that are more than like, I don't know, 10 to 30 seconds long, just don't know what all out is. They clearly haven't seriously trained for anything, because going all out for 30 seconds is very difficult. And going all out for 4 minutes is something that you cannot do 4 times in a row. So all out intervals, D tier. It's not smartly structured training. Next up, we have save super shoes for race day. I completely disagree with this. I think that super shoes clearly help. They clearly give you a little boost. And if you wear super shoes in training, you'll get more out of your training, just like you do if you wear super shoes in a race. You get more out of the race. However, if they cause injuries, I guess, yes, save them for race day. So for that, I'll give it a C tier. Next was carb load before every race. Look, carbs are good. They're totally necessary for high performance running. I completely agree with that. But I do think the carbo load gets a little bit overemphasized when people are doing it for like a 5K, an 800. I don't think you need to drastically change your diet, and drastically changing what you eat the day before the race when you don't always do that can upset your stomach. Obviously for a marathon and ultra, it's a little more important to focus on the carbo load, but for shorter events, don't overthink it. Just do what you usually do before your workouts. Stick with what you know. So for that, I'm giving it B because carbs are good, but let's not stress ourselves out here. And now moving on to recovery/injury prevention tips. First one is wear deodorant, which at first you think that's not a recovery or injury prevention tip, but you could injure someone's nose if they had to sniff your absolutely horrible stench. So I think it's really important to wear deodorant when you run, and I would put that in S tier, especially if it is Wild deodorant.
Wild is refillable body care powered by nature. They have a variety of products like body wash, lip balm, deodorant, and more that are naturally effective and free from plastic waste. My Wild deodorant was delivered straight to me and included a planet-friendly refillable aluminum case and a variety of vegan compostable refills. There were all sorts of fun scents, including some from their partnership with mental health charity Mind, which are infused with essential oils to inspire tranquility, renewal, and positivity. The deodorant is easy to use. I just selected a scent and inserted it into the case. When I run out, I can just use a deodorant refill and I don't have to get a new case. Wild is effective, naturally vegan, no waste, and convenient. It has over 50,000 5-star reviews, and I can confidently say, as someone who basically sweats for a living, that it does a great job controlling odor. If you'd like to try Wild, you can get 20% off with code Allie20. Just click the QR code on screen or check it out at the link in my description.
All right, next one up is run barefoot or with minimalist shoes to strengthen your feet and avoid injuries. I think anyone that read Born to Run knows that this was like very viral back in 2014, and I don't really agree with it because I think that having supportive shoes can actually really help. I mean, if you enjoy barefoot running, it feels good for you, you are part of the Tarahumara, then maybe it's really good. However, I think for most people it will cause injuries, and I actually have a friend that this happened to, so definitely don't jump into it and don't do a lot of it. But if you want to run like a couple laps barefoot, that's great. So I'll put that one into C tier. Not horrible, but we could really do better. Oh, next up is don't wear new shoes on race day. I think this one is prevention for, blisters. I have firsthand experience with this because I wore shoes for the second time in my last race and bled through them. So I would say this is really good advice, S tier even, and I wish that I had listened to it. Next up is buy good running shoes. That's an easy, just yes, good advice. Everyone should get a good pair of running shoes. It's definitely worth the investment. It's something that I spend a lot of money on, and I'm very cheap, but running shoes is something I will never skimp on. I'm gonna go A tier because it's great advice, but it's not groundbreaking, So it's not quite S, but definitely good. Next one is run on soft surface. I love running on soft surfaces. I think switching up what surface you run on is really advantageous. You're slightly changing the stress on your body every time you do that. Switching between trails and dirt roads and track and treadmill and roads is amazing. I don't think that just being on soft surface is what matters for the injury prevention, but it's definitely good to switch between surfaces. So I'll go B tier on this one. Oh my gosh, there's just a bee just crawling on my camera right now. It's just right on the lens. And he just loves it. He's just not leaving. Are you done, buddy? Okay, so next up, we're moving on to mental tips, and the first one is just the 20-minute rule / get out the door, just get started. Sometimes the start of a run is the most difficult part, and then after you actually get going, it's so much more enjoyable. You build it up in your head to be so much harder than it's going to be. This goes for runs, workouts, lifts, cross training, everything. If you can't find the motivation to do what's actually on your schedule, just tell yourself you'll go for 20 minutes, and then usually once that 20 minutes is done, you find the motivation to actually keep going. I think this is a great tip. It makes things more manageable, lowers the activation energy. I would put that one in A tier. The next one is don't judge the first 10 minutes. This goes for the first lap or 2 mile of a race, first 10 minutes of a run or a workout. Don't judge how the entire workout or race will go based off of just the first part of it. Sometimes you feel really bad and then you get into a groove and feel better later, so it's important not to get too in your own head at the beginning. Having this rule, the don't judge the first 10 minutes, helps me avoid negative spirals. So I will put this one in A tier. I love it. Next up is breaking your workout into sections mentally, or runner math, as has been the viral term for this. And basically it just means if you have 16 by 400 in your head, break it into 4 sets of 4, or if you have a 20-mile long run in your head, break it into 4 by 5 miles. That just makes it so much more manageable mentally and gives you checkpoints along the way that give you a little boost going forward. Runner math, I think, is absolutely essential for whatever you're training for, and that one goes S tier. Next up is look good, feel good, race good. I think that this is definitely something that exists. If you watch sprinters, they've like got huge nails, they've got crazy hair. It's important to feel good about yourself when you're stepping to the line. I'm definitely not like quite as into this as some people, but I enjoy wearing speed goggles during workouts. They make that day feel kind of special and fun, and that gives me a little boost. Anything that can give you a mental boost on race day is a yes. So this one will go B tier. Next up is the faster you run, the sooner you're done. Everyone hears this. This one's tough because I think it's such good advice for race day, because obviously the faster you go, the better. But it's not necessarily good advice for an easy run that you don't feel like doing, because you should actually go easy on your easy runs and not just try to run as fast as possible and get them done. Workouts also, you should be running the prescribed pace. So it's a little tough. I'll put this one in B, but it's almost C if I'm being honest. The next one is when you feel tired, smile. A lot of people actually sent this in, and it made me remember this tradition I had in high school with my dad, where every time I heard him cheer, I was required to smile at him because I got so nervous in high school and would like get really in my own head. So smiling at him like reminded me to enjoy it. I also think that it's psychological. The motion of smiling actually tells your brain that you're happy and you feel good. So if you're hurting in a race, definitely try smiling. See if you can just trick your brain into thinking that you're happy and you feel good. It's an easy little thing to do that could help, so for that, I'll go A tier. We finally are to the absolutely unhinged tips. The first one is, if you're skinny, you should be a distance runner. And I have a picture of me just laying face down on the ground because that's how this makes me feel. This mentality is so damaging in the distance running community, and it doesn't matter what your body type is. Different people have different bodies. All of them can succeed. You just need to fuel yourself appropriately, and your body will be exactly what it needs to for how you're training. Just because you're skinny doesn't necessarily mean you'll be fast. Just because you're bigger doesn't mean you'll be slow. It's all about the way that you train and what you prepare your body to do. So for that, this one gets D tier. I wish we had E and F tier. It would be very low. The next one is overtrain until it's not overtraining. I feel like I've heard a lot of people say stuff like this. Like, if you just keep training like super hard, eventually it'll get easy, but that's just not true. You need periodized training with recovery, hard efforts, medium efforts, strides, rest days to be able to actually build fitness. And if you just go hard and train a lot all the time, you're just gonna end up going backwards. Overtraining syndrome is also underperformance syndrome. So that's not actually a technical term. I just riffed that out, but I think it sounds good. And overtraining does cause underperformance. So overtrain until it's not overtraining, D tier. Next one is cut weight for race day. You already know that I do not like this. This is gonna be an automatic D tier. I used a picture of a stress fracture to show this one because that's probably what will happen when you try to get cute with this. It can end in injury, it can cause eating disorders, an unhealthy relationship with food. It's just not a good idea. So, D tier. Next one we have, don't run too much, it will make your knees hurt. This is also so common. Like, there is a very common misconception that running is horrible for your knees. I know a lot of runners, and I feel like almost no one gets knee injuries. Like, it's really not a big deal. If anything, shin splints is like the big common running injury, and like Achilles tendonitis. I feel like no one's worrying about their knees. So I would say run to make your knees better, because runners have great knees. That one's gonna be D tier. Next one is run fasted / work on fat adaptation. This is kind of big in the ultra running community because obviously you can store more fat than you can glycogen. So theoretically, it'd be great if you could just get really efficient at burning fat for energy. Fasted training is one of the ways that people can do that, but this is also a really high level thing, I think, and there's a lot of nuance to it and you have to be really careful, especially female athletes. It's kind of something that's very on the edge of performance, that there's so many other things you should focus on before ever thinking about that. It's your general training, increasing volume, increasing intensity, heat training, strength training, all of those should come before you even try to get cute with like fat adaptation. And even then, it might not help at all. There's not a ton of convincing research, so that one's gonna go D tier. Next one is treadmill miles don't count. This got big this year and I don't understand because like obviously treadmill miles count. You're still running. Anyone that's run on the treadmill knows it's not easy. Physiologically, it's a little bit easier than outdoor running, but not that much, probably like 1-2% easier. And mentally, it's a lot harder. So I feel like treadmill miles honestly count for more sometimes, and especially if you make it uphill treadmill, they count. I don't know who started this. I feel like it's the hardos that are like, go outside, it's a snowstorm with lightning and a tsunami coming in. I don't care. I'm running. I'm not gonna run in a snowstorm, lightning, tsunami. Like, I'm gonna go on the treadmill and possibly evacuate the area. So yeah, I think this one's D tier. Next up, we have sweat more to burn more calories. People thinking that like if they sweat more, it's a better workout. That's just not true. It just means that your body had to work harder to thermoregulate, and it actually probably means that your performance decreased a little bit. Sweating, while it may burn a small amount of calories because it does take energy, is just taken away from the actual effort that you could put into running. So, D tier. Next one is only fast runners should wear super shoes. This is like actually maybe the worst advice because theoretically these super shoes improve your performance by like 2 to 4%. That percentage is a larger amount of time the more time you take to run. The longer you're taking, the more super shoes help. So super shoes actually are great for everyone. And also like, we don't need to gatekeep. People want to wear super shoes. It gives you a boost. It makes you feel fast. Then do it. Everyone should get to know what super shoes feel like because they're great. So, yeah, D tier. I think we all saw that coming. The last one we have is you need to go X amount of minutes for it to count. Oh, you need 45 minutes for it to be an actual workout. You need to go 3 miles for it to be an actual run. You know, I guess I'll go like C tier for this because it's not absolutely horrible, but it's just like whatever you actually are able to do counts. Whatever you have time for that day is great. Whatever your training plan says, do, even if it's less than what people say counts. So I'll go C just because I went D on everything else, and this is probably the least bad of the unhinged advice, but it's not good. However, I do think there's a certain point where it's like, don't do 10 5-minute runs in a day. That's not really gonna be good for training or recovery. But if you only have time for 1 5-minute run that day, then like go for 5 minutes. That is the full tier list. I hope that you enjoyed this and maybe learned something, maybe learned something to not do. Let me know what you think I missed in the comments. I'd love to hear more viral running advice and tips that people have gotten online. I think it's hilarious, the stuff that's just floating around out there. But anyways, that's all for now, folks.